From one of Australia's former leading homicide detectives, this is I Catch Killers with Gary Jubelin.
Today, I spoke to Sally Leydon, the daughter of missing woman Marion Barter. Marion disappeared in bizarre circumstances 27 years ago. Sally doesn't know what happened to her mum, but she's determined to find out. And today, we spoke to her about the enduring pain a loved one's disappearance can cause. We also spoke about the shocking truth about the failings of the police investigation and a mysterious man called Rick Blum, who came into Marion's life around the time she disappeared. Rick Blum has denied any involvement in the disappearance of Marion. Sally is determined to find out what happened to her mother, and just maybe today's chat may prompt something. Sally Leydon, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and look, I want to say up front, condolences for what you've gone through with your mother, having disappeared 27 years ago, and I've seen enough of people in the uncertainty and not knowing what happened and the pain of having a loved one just disappear.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It is a hard road to walk, I guess. But yeah, thank you for having me and having a chat with me about it.
Well, I don't think people fully appreciate what happens when someone just disappears, or you haven't got answers, or someone's died in suspicious circumstances. You haven't got answers, and I'm sure some people will say, well, 27 years ago, why are you still campaigning? Can you just explain that to them? Because I fully understand. I've seen enough of victims' families, and it's not something that you ever get closure from.
No, and you live with it forever, and I feel like I didn't really want to leave that burden of searching for my children. I've got 3 children, and that's their grandmother. They never met her. She'd already disappeared by the time I had babies, and even by the time I was getting married. I got married a year after she went missing. And it is a roller coaster, and there are times where I've had to tap out and just focus on being a mum, or building houses or working in our business. And then when I have the energy to come back in, I jump back in and go a little bit further until, you get knocked down again. And you can only get knocked down so much, but I have this personality and ability, I guess, to just pull myself out and keep going, because for me, my mum matters. Yeah. And she shouldn't, I quite often are quoted of saying, she's not a lost puppy. And it might be 27 years. I'm actually 52 now. Technically, at the time, the coroner has deemed that when she passed, she was 52 as well. And my eldest daughter is 23, about to turn 24, and I was 23, turning 24 when Mum disappeared. So in our world, we've actually come full circle in life again to where, Ella's the same age as I was, I'm the same age as Mum was, and we still don't know what's happened to her. And so I'll keep going. People joke that I'm a Taurian, and I do have this stubbornness in me, so I guess that's part of it.
I think people that listen to the podcast today will find out that you need to be stubborn, because for all the kicks that you've had, you keep getting up and keep fighting. Why have you campaigned so hard?
Well, I guess at the outset it was about my mum, but as time has grown, I've realised that, everybody needs a voice in the missing space, and, the ambiguity that we live with, those of us living with a missing loved one, it's really important that we do remember them and that we keep fighting for the truth. I think, as I've been kicking along, I have found things. So yeah. I keep finding things. I keep digging deeper, and the more people that I put calls out for people to help me as well, and people have come to that table, and it's with those little bits of information that it just keeps going, and this story just keeps growing every day. So I am keeping on.
Well, some things have been uncovered, and I dare say, and we'll get into this more in the podcast, that as a former police officer now working in the media in this space on true crime, understanding the police organisation, I can say comfortably that if you weren't campaigning and going so hard, it would have been forgotten. Yeah,
well, she was forgotten. She's been forgotten multiple times, even at the very outset. So I walk into Byron Bay Police Station. I didn't use the words missing. I just said something's wrong. My mum's supposed to be overseas.
Yeah.
I've just found out that money's coming out of her bank account in large sums every day for 3.5 weeks in Byron Bay and in Burleigh. Something's wrong. She missed my brother's birthday. That was very out of character for her. And something that I've always wanted to get out for anybody who finds themselves in this position, the language is actually important, but equally the police probably need to start looking at that as well. And because their argument to, in court was, well, Sally didn't walk in and say her mother was missing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, as a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, I didn't know what was happening. I just knew that my mum was supposed to be overseas and money's coming out of her bank account in Byron Bay. The reaction from the lady on the phone when I rang telebanking, she nearly had a heart attack. She's like, what? I can't tell you this, but holy moly, there's money coming out of her bank account in Byron Bay. So, it started at that very outset. They only marked my mum as an occurrence only at that stage, within 24 hours of me going to the police station.
It's a failing from the start, and not beating up on individuals, but there's mistakes made that if people in those circumstances, and it doesn't need to be an experienced police officer, anyone with common sense, and one would hope that anyone in the police with common sense would realise, okay, this is something, the details that you just provided there, as a nice junior constable, you'd think, okay, this is something that we better have a look at. But look, let's tell us about the circumstances of your mum's disappearance. Just brief details, because we're going to break it down. So it's complex, but where was she? The fact she went overseas and then... Yeah.
So she was a school teacher. She just won Best Teacher in Queensland award. Ida Buttrose actually gave her that award in November of 1996. She came second in Australia overall. So she was achieving well at school. Yeah. She was doing well. She loved her little boys that she taught. She taught 4 and 5-year-olds at TSS on the Gold Coast, which is the Southport School. It's a private boys' school, probably one of the best in Queensland. She wasn't very happy. There was times in the new year, around the March, February time period, where she just wasn't getting along with a few people at school, and I always sort of thought to myself, potentially there was a bit of tall poppy syndrome happening. She'd won this award and people didn't like that. And I've even heard comments since then that people were, saying, oh, well, it was the parents who were voting for her. And so even little comments like that, I'm like, what, does it really matter who voted for her? She wins the award.
If the parents are voting for her.
You'd probably want to hope so.
Yeah.
But anyway, she decided to sell her house and go on a trip overseas.
Okay.
I did think it was odd that she left halfway through a year, because she was a very dedicated teacher, but she was also quite upset about a few things that were happening at school. Someone had accused her of touching a boy, and that just absolutely wiped her for 6. She was in tears about it. I was just gobsmacked, because I know my mum very well, and she would never have done anything of the sort. So that was all happening. She decided to sell the house and told my husband and I, he was my fiancé back then, we just got engaged, that she was going to come back in a year and she was going to buy an apartment or a unit at Main Beach, which is on the Gold Coast, not far from her house. And by doing so, she'd have to give us a couple of big pieces of her furniture, because she wouldn't be able to house them in the unit when she got back. The rest of her treasures were going into a shipping container. And foolishly, I never asked her where the shipping container was going. She just said to me, if I decide to stay overseas and teach, I will get you to send it over to me.
Okay.
And I thought, okay. And everything made sense to me.
Yeah.
She did sell the house really quickly. So she sold it in 3 weeks for less than $15,000 that she paid for it. And if you wind back to 1997, we're talking around $170,000, $160,000 for a house, just for some perspective in today's market.
Different world now.
Different world. So that was a bit odd. I did think that was a bit weird, but I wasn't the kind of child, I guess, or young adult that asked my mum or probed into my mum's business too much. Anyway, there was a night that she'd asked me if I would come and help her start packing up the house, and I was going to TAFE because, ironically, I was trying myself to get into the Queensland Police. So I was studying at TAFE while working full time.
Maybe you should have. I do joke.
I do joke about that. I should have persisted. But anywho, Chris went round my partner.
That's your partner.
Yeah, and he helped Mum pack up. And so he was helping her. He was putting some records from under the TV cabinet into some boxes. And she walked out and said, "What's the time?" And he gave her the time. And she said, "Oh, okay, well, just drop what you're doing. I need you to go." And he goes, "No, Marion, it's okay. I'll just keep packing this box and finish." And he goes, "No, you just need to leave it. I need you to go." So he left, quite bewildered as to why she was sort of kicking him out of the house in such a hurry. He came and picked me up from TAFE. We stopped at a service station on the way home that had a McDonald's attached to it because it's late. We didn't have time to cook dinner.
You don't
whatever.
have to make excuses for having McDonald's.
I feel bad every time I say that now. I cringe.
That's funny.
Because I don't eat McDonald's. But anyway.
Explain, why did you have McDonald's?
Anyway, life changes. But anyway, so we're sitting at McDonald's and my mum's car pulled up in the petrol Bowser. And Chris actually was the one who saw her because I had my back to the Bowser, and I stood up and I started waving at her, and she's standing at the car with the door open like she's about to put petrol in the car, and just stares at me like a deer in headlights as if to say, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" sort of thing. And anyway, she got back in the car, didn't put petrol in the car, and drove off. But she went around to the left, which meant that she went through the drive-through, and instead of driving straight past us. And I think she did that because there was a man in the car.
Okay.
And I clearly could see that there was a guy. He was very tall. His head was nearly touching the roof. But the reflection from the lights, the bright lights at night time in the petrol station meant that I didn't get a very clear look at him. But he was big. And I guess I always figured that if she'd driven past the window where we were standing, I would have got a full view of who that was. Yeah. I did ask her the next day and said, "Who was the man in the car?" She said, "Just a friend I've met at the art centre. He was just taking me out to say goodbye before I go overseas."
Okay.
And I went, "Okay, no problem." I didn't probe.
You respect...
respect her privacy. I kind of joked and went, "Oh, maybe she's got a boyfriend. She doesn't want to tell me about it." Yeah. But, I just left it at that, essentially. So she came and had dinner with us. She asked if I'd make her a lamb roast. And she came to our house with her friend Leslie. She'd moved in with Leslie because she'd sort of had to leave the house a couple of weeks before she was ready to move, to go on the trip, I should say. And Leslie lived close to school, so it sort of made sense that, whereas we were like 30 minutes away, so it was probably better for her to stay with Leslie. And so Leslie drove Mum out to our house. I made her a lamb roast. And... yeah, that was the last time I saw her. Gave her a hug and a kiss. She sort of looked a bit sad that she was leaving.
What period of time was...
22nd of June, 1997 is when she left.
Okay.
So she was there on the Saturday night and then she left the next day.
All right, so she's going overseas. She's 51, 52, and she wasn't that happy with her life at that particular point in time, and she wanted a career break, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you stayed in contact with her when she was overseas?
So, again, winding back to 1997, not many people had mobile phones. They were pretty new. There was no internet apart from the dial-up variety. So it wasn't like you could just FaceTime someone or jump on Facebook. So I was really reliant on her to contact me, which she did. So she sent me a couple of postcards and she sent me a letter as well. Yep. And she did ring me. So after the Thredbo disaster happened, Chris and I had been skiing. We'd driven down to go skiing and we were there and we were driving back when we heard about the Thredbo disaster. And when we got home, there was an answering machine message. So the light was flashing and I pressed it and it was Mum. And she said, "Oh, I've just heard word over here about the Thredbo disaster. I was just checking to see if you guys are okay." Yeah. And I was really sad because I'd just bought my wedding dress here in Sydney on our way home in the car, and I really wanted to tell her because she was here when we got engaged, right? Yeah. So she came to our engagement party on the 9th of June. She left on the 22nd of June. So she was aware of what we were doing. She knew that I was trying to get into the police. She's asking all those sorts of questions and being engaging with us in those letters and postcards. And then she rang and said to me, "Look, I'm going to stop sending lots of postcards. I'm sending postcards to everyone," which she did, from evidence. And she said, "I just need to have a break." And I said, "Yes, go and have a break. You don't need to send us 100 postcards. It's hard to get a stamp and find a post box. Go and have a break. That's fine. We're all fine here." And that was the last time I spoke to her. She was at a payphone and the money kept dropping out. Okay. And she'd ring back and... she'd talk for a bit and then the money would ring. the money would drop out again. And when we got to the last bit, she said, "This is all the money I've got now, so I'll just let you talk until the phone drops out." So I'm literally just talking away, and the phone cut off.
Dropped out.
And that was it last time I spoke to her.
Okay. Now, what do you know the date that was?
So the timeline of that is the 31st. Well, we know that the Threadbare disaster happened around midnight on the 30th of June, 1997, and we were coming back. So we think that she's called and left the message on the 31st, and then she's rung me again on the 1st.
Yeah.
Her passport came back into Australia the next day.
Right. So explain this, and this is where, and I've got to say, I've read through the full coroner's report, and I think it was 169 pages or whatever, the coroner's findings, and there's so many twists and turns on this. I found it fascinating, but she came back into the country the next day. So she'd been overseas for 6 weeks or so?
Yeah, so 6 weeks out of the whole year that she said she was going for.
Yeah, and she's come back into the country.
Mm-hmm.
How did we'll do it in sequence of events because it's so, and you know so much now that you didn't know back then. So okay, that's the last time you spoke to your mum back then. When did you realise that she had come back into Australia?
So what happened was I was at TAFE, as I said, and I was trying to get in the police force. I guess for me, she'd given me that out, that she was having some time out. She wasn't going to be sending postcards. She wasn't going to be sending letters.
So you're not overly concerned?
So at that point I was like, okay, I'll talk to you when I talk to you.
Yeah.
But then, that's the 1st of August. I guess probably a month went by. We're now in September. I'm like, she hasn't contacted me. That's getting long now. Like I haven't spoken to her for a while. And then October came around. I was like, okay, now I'm starting to get a bit worried. Like she's been gone for 2 months now and I haven't spoken to her. Surely she'll contact Owen, my brother, for his birthday, which was the 18th of October. And so I called him to see if she had called on the Saturday, which was his birthday, and he said no. And I said, okay, I sort of gave her a bit of grace to go, the UK's behind us. Maybe she's got her dates mixed up. She'll ring him tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I rang him again and he said, no, she hasn't called me. And it was just that a friend came over for dinner that night and we were talking about it and I was saying, I'm worried. Like now I don't know, she would never miss his birthday. So what are we going to do? And she suggested that I ring the bank because I had her bank account details and see if she was using her bank account. And here I am thinking it would be overseas and that she'd say yes or no. I rang and she said, I can't tell you anything due to privacy. And then she paused and she said, oh my God, did you say your mum's overseas? And I said, yes. And she said, oh, there's money coming out of her bank account in Byron Bay.
Okay. So
she goes, you can't tell anybody I'm telling you this because I'll lose my job.
Yeah.
So there was all that rushing through my head as well. And I was just grateful that she told me. And so my husband and I, we actually worked weekends in our jobs. And we've gone back. I have gone back with a fine-tooth comb to look at the timeline, and it's my opinion that we actually drove to Byron on the 20th. The police report says it was the 22nd, but if you look at that really closely, they've done a lot of work, I guess, of ringing people and talking to people in a 45-minute period by when he said that he did it and he's lodged it. So I'm not sure about that. That's all a bit grey, and no one can really say yay or nay. But Chris and I think we went on the Monday. And we went down there with a school photo of Mum's and we walked around everywhere to see if someone had seen her.
And
I was
literally walking around
with a
banks
photo.
Or going to shops or have you seen this lady?
So we went into Woolworths, we went into the chemist, we went into a naturopath shop, health food shop. Anywhere I thought Mum would go if she was actually in Byron. My head was spinning.
And that's on the basis you think your mum's overseas. And then you've spoken to the bank because you've got concerns because she didn't phone on Owen's birthday, which she normally would. Hadn't heard from her for months. The bank tells you that, she's withdrawing money here, and then you've gone to Byron Bay.
Yeah.
I can understand why your head's spinning.
Yeah, and and in the inquest it was sort of like thrown against Chris and I because Chris had a different opinion. He thought maybe someone had stolen her card and was using her card in Byron. For me, I just was like, has someone seen her? Like, is she here? Like, what's happening? So I didn't have that thought process at all. And it wasn't until we went to the bank and I walked in and he said, how can I help you? We were the only people in there. There was no one else and there was only one person serving. And I handed him the photo and I said, look, my mum's supposed to be overseas, but I've just been told by your telebanking that money's been coming out of her bank account here.
Yeah.
Can you help me? And he picked up the photo and he shook it and he said, that rings a bell. So his body language to me was really off. He took the photo and walked around the back of some tables, went into a room, closed the door behind him, came out, went over to the photocopy, took a photo of it, and came back to me and said, "What would you like me to say to her if I see her?" So I was like having a meltdown, and we drove straight around to Byron Bay Police, and I walked in there and said, "Something's wrong. Something is very wrong."
Understandably, because the background of your mother, and you're her daughter, so you'd know as well as anyone, this is not the type of normal behaviour for her, is it?
No, and it was just really off.
Yeah.
I just had a really bad feeling.
So-
So walked in there, a big mistake I made, and I hope other people learn from this, is you make sure you take down every single detail, because I didn't remember the name of the guy who gave me the report. I didn't get a business card. I didn't get do a statement. I literally just told him everything, thinking that was how you do it. And
well, let's put it out there, because I don't like people not understanding what the practices are in police. But if you go into a police station to report something, get the name of the officer that you're speaking to, time and date, and make a note of it. And if it's a matter that you're reporting, ask for an event number. So you've got an event number. I'm not telling you now; you know that now. But for other people, because
100%.
I think so many times people, and I honestly believe it's because we're brought up to trust police. Like, you go and the police will sort it. You've got a problem, you go to the police, and you assume that the police are going to sort this problem. But I think that safeguard, getting the name of the officer you speak to, making people accountable, and wherever you work, if someone, what's your name? Okay, you're going to be accountable for this. I think that's a good practice. So let's put that out there. You've gone in and you explained when we first started the podcast, you said, you got concerns about your mother. What were you told by the police at the time?
I wasn't told anything.
Yeah.
He just listened and wrote things down in his notebook, and then Chris and I left. And I really kicked myself a lot for not just taking down more detail. I got a phone call about a week to 10 days later. Again, kicked myself for not writing it down or taking note of who I spoke to on the phone. When people ask me, my opinion of my memory is that it was the same man that I spoke to at the desk, but I can't prove that because I didn't write anything down. But that phone call was a gentleman calling me to tell me that they'd found my mother, and she didn't want anything to do with us. Her exact words were, "We found your mother. She doesn't want anyone knowing where she is or what she's doing." And that is burnt into my brain. So...
But that's not true, is it?
No, no, it's not. They've told me now that they've never spoken to her, they've never sighted her. So, and the kicker for me, Gary, is my brother took his own life shortly after my mum went missing. And I firmly believe he had problems. Like he had his own issues and demons he was working through. But he was about to get married. He was in a very good headspace in my heart, and I think he did not cope very well when he was told that.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I understand what you're saying there. To be told that your mum's back in the country, she just doesn't want to speak to you. That's a burden for anyone to carry.
And even just the way it was said to me, like no one sat down and said, "Listen, I understand this was going to be hard for you to hear. Your mother doesn't want to have anything to do with you anymore." Like just to be told on the phone so brash. And even, since then, I know you're going to tell me not to jump forward, but, we've got records now from Queensland Police Missing Persons Unit, because they actually were involved as well with my grandfather's involvement. He lived up on the Sunshine Coast, and he had contacted missing persons through the Salvation Army, and they were working with Queensland Missing Persons.
Yeah.
And they actually wrote, I've got a letter from the Salvation Army just saying, bank security confirm that it was definitely your daughter Marion who went in and spoke of starting a new life and withdrew the balance of her bank account. And bank security are like the police, so must be true. And in her notebook, she hasn't taken down the name of the bank teller who served Mum, who claims that it was definitely my mum who went in, and telling my grandfather it was definitely your daughter Marion is the word choice. And the kicker there too is that she didn't withdraw all the money out of her bank account. There was still money sitting in her bank account up until last year.
And it sat dormant since the withdrawal of that large amount?
Oh, yeah, they sat dormant, and then they were still taking bank fees out of my mum's bank account right up until the end of the inquest.
To me, with the comments like that, you can a piece of information can interpret it many ways, but interpreted that your mother just doesn't want to see you. Well, I don't know how anyone could say that unless they've spoken to your mother. Like, that's just an assumption, and that sort of information shouldn't be passed on to members of the public if police have passed it on, the information the way that you said. But in the circumstances, to contact you and tell you that they've spoken to your mother and it doesn't appear that that's correct, that to me, and I could be wrong here, I'm only surmising, understanding the workings and the organisation of the police. It's like someone that, we can close that line of inquiry.
Yeah, well, I've seen the line of inquiry from when I initially went into Byron Bay Police, and they actually marked her as an occurrence only. Yep. And the wording is no action until the person is actually listed as missing, and nil action due to other work priorities. Yeah. And I'm reading that going, okay, so does that mean she's not a priority? And, the word choices in the language on the police report is, she was 51, she's been married and divorced 3 times, she's capable of this behaviour. Yeah. Without talking to my mum, never ever speaking to her. And I think for me, when people ask me why do I keep pushing and keep going, that's one of the main things. I want people to learn that language is actually, and what you say and what your words do actually can cause a lot of problems for somebody, especially if you're living in this ambiguous bubble over here where you don't know what's happened and you're always guessing and your mind just goes a million miles an hour.
But I hear what you're saying, and I just want to say to you, don't blame yourself. You've done the right thing. You've gone to the police with genuine, legitimate concerns, and there's been a failing in the system, not a failing from your point of view. Like, it's you accept what police tell you on face value. And I told you not to jump ahead. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, in that during the coronial inquest that wasn't held for years and years after, Detective Chief Inspector Brown, who I know, and I rate him as a good detective, and he was heading up the missing persons unit at the time that he gave this evidence. He said in a statement that forms part of the evidence of the coronial brief, and this is from Detective Chief Inspector Brown: "It is my view that Marion Barter should not have been classified as located, as her whereabouts were still unknown and there was still justification to hold concerns for her safety or well-being." So that's someone that's reviewed it years later. So it's not just, give you some credit here, it's not just you saying things could be done better, or me trying to beat up on the police on the matter. That's someone that's still a serving police officer that reviewed the situation and came up with that opinion and gave that evidence at the coronial inquest in his statement. So that must add to the frustration. Yeah,
look, frustration, and I was really glad I was there when Glenn gave his statement on that, and I sort of felt like finally someone could actually say, yes, what Sally did is correct. Because if I can add to my mum's family, her sisters in particular, and in particular one of those sisters had a go at me when I listed mum as missing, and she had my grandfather as well, and she said, I don't know why you guys are doing this. She's just having a holiday. She's just having a break. Why would you go and list her as missing? And so they sort of had a crack at me, and they don't talk to me anymore. Yeah. Like, ever since I've done the podcast, The Lady Vanishes. And I understand that it's traumatic, and I understand it's upsetting, and I understand that not everybody is like me who can just keep plugging along and going with it. And it is upsetting for them. It's their sister. She was the eldest. But, at the same time, it's important that, we do look for her, and we make out that what's happened to her, make sure she's safe and well. And so for years and years and years, I just wanted to find her to make sure she was okay. I'd even say, I don't need to see you. I don't need to talk to you if you don't want to talk to me. As sad as that is, just let me know you're okay, and I can rest my heart, because I can't rest until I know. And, I'm on heart medication now. Like, it's been really hard for me to do what I'm doing. This is not easy. But I just feel I have to do it for her. I have to do it for her, and I have to do it for every other missing person as well, because they need a voice. My mum's not here to tell her story.
Well, I think you're entitled to. I mean, you're her daughter, like it's closest relative, and you got concerns for your mum's well-being. So there's a whole range of things that came out, and we'll talk more about the police investigation. But when did you find out that your mum, just before she went overseas, changed the name? And do you want to explain when you became aware of that?
Yeah. So in that timeline of she's rung us on the phone in the August, and Owen's birthday in October. As soon as I knew that, and I went to the police, in Byron Bay. I was at TAFE, and we had a whole heap of different people in my class, because we had some customs agents who were trying to become a cop, and we had other people working in the prisons who were trying to be a cop.
You got
so I was among a lot of people in that field, and we had a guy, and I wasn't really friends with him, but I just knew he worked in customs, and I said to him, can you do a passport check for me?
Yep.
This is after I've been told that they found her.
Yeah.
Okay, so that phone call came in, as I said, about a week to 10 days after I'd been to the police. And he then came back to me and he said, your mum's passport came back into the country on the 2nd of August.
Yep.
So that's when I found out about it. Now, the interesting thing there, and I didn't know this at that time, but my mum had changed her name.
Yeah.
And so when I told him, I gave him Marion Barter and her date of birth. Which is the 3rd of the 10th, 45. So that's all I gave him to go on. And he's come back and told me that. He didn't tell me anything else. And it wasn't until 2011 that we found out that she'd actually changed her name.
Okay. And what did she change her name to?
Well, Florabella, Natalia, Marian, Ramakel.
Okay. And that has some significance.
Huge significance.
Yeah, what we're going to find out later.
Yep.
Okay. Dealings with the police. So you've reported in initial report in October 97, and then after no further investigation was undertaken until July 2007.
Correct.
So when we say no investigation, we're talking
Zero
investigation.
Yep. And it was just that so in that time period, if I can give everyone the idea, we built a house, we got married, and we had 3 children in that 10 years. So I was quite busy with life and trying to be the best person I could as well. Owen died, my grandfather died. So we had a lot going on, and it just got to the point where I was pregnant with my 3rd baby, and he was due in June. So I was in my first trimester, essentially. And my girlfriend was over, and I said to her, I need to do something. It's Mum's 10th anniversary this year, and no one's doing anything. Yeah. So I contacted. I had done, just for clarity, I had in 2004. I actually reached back out to the Salvation Army after my grandfather was passed. He was very sick with cancer, so it was either just before he passed or after he passed. And I reached out to them, asking for the information about what they'd told my grandfather. And they came back and said, we've got no records of anything. And we've tried to find your mother, and there's nothing we can find. So we're really sorry. God bless. And that was probably it. And then a short time after that, the lady I was working with in that circumstance, she contacted me and said, look, Women's Day magazine would like to do an article about missing mums on Mother's Day. Would you like to be involved? So I did do that article. I was pregnant with my second daughter, Darcy, and I remember I had Ella on my lap in the photo, and I remember saying to my husband, he had sort of indicated he didn't want her in the magazine, and I said, well, I really want her in the magazine, because if Mum reads it and she sees that she's a grandmother,
I understand where you're coming from.
I just wanted her to see, and so that was quite stressful. So I had done that little bit of media, that was it, and nothing came of it. I didn't hear anything. Salvation Army came back to me about a month later and said, look, we haven't heard anything, we're really sorry. And then it was 2007, as I said. I've got my girlfriend Nina looking after the kids while I jump on the phone to the AFP missing persons unit. Yep. Because I thought, I'm going to go to them. They're the top dogs. Let me go to them and see what they can do to help me, because I really just had nothing. And anyway, I spoke to a really beautiful lady named Rebecca Kotz, Beck's since passed, but we became really good friends, and we spoke for probably 2 hours in that initial conversation, and then she rang me back and asked me if I would be the face of Missing Persons Week that year.
Oh, I remember when they were doing that, the AFP.
And so that's like first week of August. And I said, well, I would love to. She said, look, I think it'd be a really great opportunity for you to get your story out there. You've kept such great records of everything. I think it'd be really, really good. So I started prepping myself. I was doing lots of writing and lots of conversations and dragging myself back through it, which is probably not the best thing to do when you're pregnant. But we got to the end. I had my third cesarean, and she told me that I need to prepare myself because they're going to bounce me around from state to state to do all these interviews in that week. And so I'm there storing my breast milk. Sorry, Gary.
We've heard worse on I Catch Killers, but go on.
And well, just so my husband can come, he can take time off work to feed the baby because I'm going to have a brand new baby. I've got 2 toddlers, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she calls me a couple of days before and says, they've pulled you.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I said, what do you mean they've pulled me? She said, oh, it's apparently about missing persons with mental health this year, and your mum didn't have mental health, so they said they can't use you.
Okay.
She said, look, we've already got your tickets for the plane and everything. Still come down. I remember it really well, actually, because Kevin Rudd was sitting in front of us on the plane. And we got to Canberra on a little buzzy plane and sat in the audience. And, you know, I walked out of there and the police commissioner was outside, and Rebecca actually introduced me to him. And he came up to me and he said, oh, well, Sally, my brother's missing. I don't know where he is. And sometimes that's just how people are, you know. People have the right to be missing. And then the conversation kept going. He goes, well, my mum knows where he is, but we don't know where he is. He's missing to us. So anyway, that was a really rough time of life, right? That was not fun. And I guess for me, every time I go through those things, it takes so much energy and so much effort. And then I just come flat and splat on the ground. And I have to really suck myself back up and to keep going again and go, okay, what avenue can I do next? So at that point, it's interesting actually, because in the inquest, when you do actually get information from the brief of evidence, we can actually see that after Rebecca Cots rings Missing Persons New South Wales and asks for Mum's file so that they can put her on as the head of the face of Missing Persons that year, there's a very quick change on the COPS event from occurrence only to missing.
What? Okay.
Okay.
Just pure coincidence, you think?
Apparently so. They were asked about it at the inquest, and it was like, no, there's nothing in that. It was just happened to be exactly the same time.
10 years later, they've decided to change it from
and that
occurrence only to missing.
And that was the first time my mum was
I
put on the missing persons.
I couldn't quite work out what the thing was that changed it from occurrence to missing, but you've just explained it very well. And call me cynical, but a coincidence? No, I think an inquiry's been made by AFP. Police have looked at it. New South Wales police have looked at it and gone, oh, we better tidy this one up.
She's not actually a missing person to us.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time she'd been put onto missing persons list.
Okay.
But it was only New South Wales.
Yep.
Then this is 2007. So then in 2009, I get an OIC, so an offer of senior charge, which is the first time I had actually had that. There'd been a couple of come in and float in and out, and I remember a few of their names, but I don't really have any real depth of conversation with any of them. But Gary Sheen became the OIC on the case, and I did have a lot to do with him. We spoke a lot on the phone. He was interested. He sat down. He wanted to know everything about the case, everything we were up to. He did some digging. He found that there'd been an Armidale Crime Stoppers call come into Armidale saying that my mum's body was buried in Armidale. Right. So he organised and got approval to go out with some cadaver dogs. But it was like so many years before, and so those sorts of things started to like come about. He then told me that he'd found I don't know what you call it now. My brain's not working, but there'd been a ping on her Medicare card to get used in Grafton. So, but the problem there, which was a pretty big problem, they were looking for a doctor, And so all this flurry about trying to find a doctor's surgery and trying to find doctors who were working back in 1997 to see who it was. And in actual fact, so we had the name.
So when was the ping on the Medicare card?
So the 13th of August.
In 97?
97.
Okay.
So the ping happens. They're looking for a doctor. Turns out, fast forward to 2020, was actually an optometrist. So
Yep.
not a doctor. And he actually came as a witness on the stand, and he did say that she would have had to fill in a new customer card, which
Yep.
would have had an address on it and a phone number on it.
Mm.
And if you think about the fact that's 11 days after her passport's come back into Australia. So we really desperately wanted to find that card
Crucial.
because it could have told us where she was or who she was with at least. And they didn't find it because they were looking for a doctor instead.
So the fact between 97 and 2007, there was no inquiries done. So there was no looking whether she's accessed her bank account, any records in regards to her residential address, Medicare card, that type of thing. All the things that you would make inquiries back then. And, it's a lot easier now, or it's harder now to disappear. But there was still a lot of lines of inquiry that could have been covered to find out where she was. And if someone's writing a report off that they've found her, if the report's done properly, it should be where she's living, what her circumstances are to write the report off. But there was none of that, was there?
And well, there's no documentation with New South Wales Police to say that anyone rang me.
Yep.
So there's question in their world as to did that phone call actually happen? And I was like, well, it definitely happened because that's what started the ball rolling with my grandfather taking over and going to the Salvation Army. And so look, it was a big fat mess, to be honest. And I just, honest to goodness, I just thought by walking in there and telling them I had concerns and walking away that even though they said to me, oh, we've located her, for some weird reason in my head, I just thought she'd still be, in their system.
Yeah.
And she just wasn't.
And taking on face value what the police have told you, and that if they've located her, they know where she is or whatever. Okay, we're bringing it to 2007, and you've got an officer in charge who's making inquiries.
Yeah.
Making inquiries about like when she came into the country, all the type of inquiries that could have been done 10 years before.
Well, 2007 was when I went to the AFP, and then it was 2 years after that I got the OIC. So I had like a bit of a mix.
All right, so
and
we're looking 2009 now.
Yeah, so there's a guy, Steve McAllister, he was actually working with Missing Persons Unit at that time, and he was present at the inquest as well and gave evidence. And he remembered my mum's case, and he said, I remember because I was a big soccer fan and Marion was married to Johnny Warren, so
that's
I remembered that.
Another side issue. Johnny Warren, for people that don't know, he was a hero of mine, Captain Socceroo.
I still have people cry when I go, oh yeah, Johnny was married to my mum. They go, he was not. So I go, yeah, he was. I've met him. He actually taught me how to play soccer a little bit when I was little. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
But okay, so that is something that because
people,
he was such a
right?
high profile, so people understand the
when
ex-wife of Johnny Warren.
And when they got married, they were front page of the newspaper. Yeah. So Mum was right in the thick of it when John was at his best. Yeah. Captain of the Socceroos, captain of his local team here in Sydney, and doing really great things in the world of soccer. And so. Anyway, so 2009, we've got Gary on board. He's finding all these things. So he'd found the Medicare, he'd found out about the Crime Stoppers call, and then in 2011, he spoke to immigration in Brisbane, and he got a file that showed him that my mum's name had been changed to Florabella Ramakel.
And that was only a matter of months before she went overseas in 97?
She changed it on the 15th of May.
Okay.
1997. She left on the 22nd of June.
So that's a bit of a head spin for you.
Well, and my birthday's the 12th of May. Mother's Day always falls around my birthday. So it really blew my mind. And this is a lot to deal with from an emotional side of it as well, because I'm thinking, why did she not tell me? Well, I mean, we were pretty close. Yep. I moved up from Sydney to go and live with my mum. I'd see her weekly, multiple times a week. She'd come and have dinner with me every Thursday night where I worked. So 2011, we find out about the name change.
Yep.
And I'm going to fast forward here from this moment to 2016.
Yeah.
So 2016, I've got a lady who's following my Facebook page. I set the Facebook page up in 2013. I had less than 1,000 followers on it.
Yep.
And if you go back and read all the very beginning of that, I was close to giving up, and then I'd come back again. I'd close to giving up, and it was just
All
such
the
a
emotions.
roller coaster ride of crazy. And she contacted me and she said, "Look, Sally, I've just gone onto the National Missing Persons Register, and your mum's not on there." And so I thought, that's so weird. So I had a look, wasn't on there. So I rang my friend Rebecca Kotz again. I said, "Hey, Beck, I've just had a lady contact me and she said that mum's name's not on the Missing Persons Register. I can't see it either. Can you have a look?" And she said, she has a look and she says, "Oh, well, there's actually something on the file that I haven't seen before. I have to get approval to give it to you.
Yep.
Let me go and do that and see what they say, and I'll come back to you." So anyway, she comes back to me and she says, "I got approval. I'm going to send it to you." And it was a document, so it's on AFP letterhead.
Yep.
But that document actually has that on the 7th of December 2011, my mum was located. And on the 8th of November that year, so a month before-ish, the case had been suspended.
Run those dates again.
8th of November,
Year.
2011.
Yeah.
And then she was located on the 7th of December 2011. And that I had been, it says underneath it, there's a notation that says that I had been notified of that decision. So
I want to scream for you. How do you deal with that?
not very well. Not very well. It's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And so I jumped straight on the phone to Gary Sheehan,
Yep.
OIC, and said, "I've just had something come through from Rebecca." I explained the situation and I said, "I've got this document in front of me," and told him. He said, "Can you read it to me?" So I read it to him and he said, "Can you read it again?" I read it again and he said, "Okay, I'm going to make a call. I'm going to come back to you." So he rang me back. I don't remember if it was straight away or the day after, but he did ring me back pretty quickly. And he said, "I've spoken to them and it seems it's a typo."
Who's them?
I couldn't even tell you, actually. I don't know who. I don't know who them is. But he said, "I'm going to ring them again. I'm going to have like a deeper chat about it and see what's happening." So anyway.
So a typo, that's a long typo that someone's been located that was on missing persons and located. That's more than a typo, I would suggest.
More the fact that I actually couldn't cope with the fact that they said, "Okay, well, they suspended it on the 8th of November, but you're even telling me that you told me on the 7th of December. You didn't tell me anything. I've never heard that information, hence the shock value of it." But I was like, a month? Like, that's... Anyway, it was just, again, mind-blowing. And he did ring me back and he said, "I've spoken to them and how it works is we've got 2 boxes. So you're either missing or you're found. And because we deem that your mother is missing because she sold her house, she quit her job and she changed her name, we have no choice but to mark her as located."
Is that a computer telling them that?
And I just came back and I said, "Well, maybe you need a 3rd box.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe we need that box in the middle." And the thing that upsets me a lot about my mum's case is all the assumptions. They're assuming that because she sold her house and they're assuming because she changed her name and that she went overseas that she wanted to go missing. That's a massive assumption to make on someone that you don't know.
Sally, I'll make the assumption, if we're talking assumptions, it looks like every assumption that was made was to reduce the work, to get your mum off the missing persons, not having to do inquiries that possibly should have been done. And I'm not about beating up on individual police, or it's an organisational problem. There's a problem when this type of thing happens, and you've carried the weight of these mistakes being made. But you're either the most unluckiest person in the world or these things. So, okay, you found out now that your mum's not missing, that she's, so you go through life thinking, "Oh, well, she's not missing. My mother just doesn't want to talk to me. My mother that I was close with my whole life just doesn't want to talk to me." Where does it ramp up again to become a missing persons?
Well,
Because when you receive that, do you just go, "Well, am I just banging my head against a brick wall? What am I meant to do? Do I..."
Yeah, 100% you do. And I think for me, that lady contacting me through my Facebook page was early 2016.
Yeah.
And then the language that I was getting for the remainder of that time from police was, my hands are tied, I am doing this in my spare time. So I'm madly trying to shoot ideas like, okay, well, why don't we check, did she do a tax return? Like, she's come back in on the 2nd of August, she's left before end of financial year. Maybe if she's come back, and if money is such a drive, thinking that she's going to the bank every day for 3.5 weeks to take out $5,000 every day, clearly she wants money if it's her, so she might have been entitled to a tax return, so therefore she might have done that. Can we check if she's touched her superannuation? Can we get the passenger list? I was thinking of all the things I couldn't do because I was bound by privacy, right?
Yep.
So her privacy mattered. My hopes to find my mother clearly didn't. And so I was giving him and feeding him all these ideas, and he wouldn't tell me much about what he'd found, or what I've heard was that he couldn't access ATO. The only people that can access ATO, the police can only access ATO information if the person's in jail or in prison. He couldn't access it, so that was one part of it, and we had to wait to see if the coroner could access that information. Then he told me he'd looked at the passenger list, but there was nothing that stood out, and he told me that she hadn't touched her super.
Right.
And that was probably about it. And then, so that's 2016. We just sort of plodding along again, and I'm sort of tapping away on Facebook, and I'm trying to get some people, do you know anything? And can you share my story, please? 'Cause someone knows something. Again, very stressful time of life, and busy with 3 children who are now teenagers and going into high school, and trying to manage life as well, and not rocking myself in the corner, because I think for me at the very beginning, I remember watching a story on missing persons very early on, and there was 2 women and one of their sons, and the little boy just kept crying the entire time on the show, and I just didn't want my kids to have to live that, and I just wanted to be strong, and I just wanted to be a person to go, you know what, my mum matters, she's your grandmother, I know you've never met her before, but it's really important that we do the right thing for everybody. I want everyone to know what's happened to her. Yeah. And I was still, probably by that point, I was starting to believe that maybe she wasn't alive, because I didn't believe she wouldn't turn up for Owen's funeral. I didn't believe she wouldn't turn up for my wedding when I had kids, like all these big key moments in life that she wasn't there for. So we sort of plodded along from 2016 up until 2019. The end of 2018, and that's when Alice and Sandy and I were put in touch with each other. Yep. And Alison works for Channel 7, and a friend of hers had sort of rung me, who I knew from a parent at school, saying, if I could get you onto 60 Minutes or Sunday night program, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely I would. My grandmother, so my mum's mum, was living by herself in her beachfront property up in the Sunshine Coast, and she never spoke about it. Like, we did not talk about my mum, and I didn't want to upset her. When I did that Woman's Day article way back, I got into trouble. Like, you didn't tell us you were doing it. And I was like, well, no one ever asked me what I'm doing. I don't know how to bring it up with you guys, because you don't want to talk about it. So I wasn't prepared to do anything, and the irony of that is, as soon as she passed away, I said to my kids and my husband, I'm going to approach 60 Minutes and see if they would like to do a story on it, because someone knows something. And so I wrote to them probably 5 or 6 times, and they didn't respond to me at all. Yep. And I just thought, I'm just another missing person story that no one's really interested in. And I met Alison, we went out for a coffee, and we pretty quickly decided then that the amount of information I had and the details that we were working with, and there was more investigation that we could have done on the name, we decided to do a podcast.
Okay.
And so the podcast launched on the 1st of April.
And the name of the podcast?
The Lady Vanishes. Yeah. And so the ball sort of started rolling again at that point.
And I see there in 2018 reference to a ministerial file. So whether a letter was fired off to politicians, did that occur as well?
Well, I didn't really know too much about that. I knew that was something that Gary was looking into. And he was cranky about it. He said, if this is going down a rabbit hole that's not true, or I remember him saying that to me, but I didn't really know what was going on because they weren't talking to me. They weren't communicating what it was exactly for me. So I was left in the dark with that information, and I don't believe it went anywhere. So I'm a bit still grey in what actually was going on with that. But at that point, we launched the podcast 1st of April. We sort of put a call out. I guess my Joni, who you'll all hear about soon enough, Joni Kondos, she's a researcher who has been helping me for now 6 years, and she was listening to the Lady Vanishes. She's an avid listener of true crime. She's been listening for 20 years, and she said the difference between you, Sal, and other podcasts I've heard before was you were actually asking for people to help. And so when I heard that, I just thought I might just sit down and have a bit of a play, and I was playing with the name Ramakerl, because when she looked into it, there was no Ramakerls in Australia, except for my mum. And we were like, oh, this is a pretty rare name. Turns out there's only 101 Ramakerls in the world.
Okay.
Right, put into perspective. So no Jane Does or, Jane Smiths or anything. It's a very rare name. And she herself, her husband's grandmother went missing, or great-grandmother went missing, and she and the family had worked for 15 years to try and find her, and they actually did find her, and what had happened to her. She'd been deceased, but they did find her, and she just thought to herself, I've got these tools here that potentially I can help Sally. I'll just have a bit of a play around and see what I find. She was sick, she had the flu, and she was up at midnight, and she punched it in, and this ad binged up on her screen. She was so excited. She ran and jumped in on her husband. She said, oh my God, I found something. Something. And so that ad was in the Le Courrier Australien. It's a French-speaking newspaper that runs out of Sydney. And it was a gentleman with the initial M and then F, Ramakerl.
Yep.
And it sort of just goes along, single 47. I think it was 40. He was 47. The ad was written in 1994, and it sort of talks about his single, good-looking, non-smoker, non-drinker, a polyglot, speaking multiple languages, and bon chic, bon char, which is like a term that he put in there, which we found out means good taste, good style, and looking for a relationship, potential marriage.
Okay. And
it had a PO box in Ballina, New South Wales, with a phone number.
Okay, so to keep our listeners on the song with it, you've got the surname, a unique surname.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same surname as your mother changed her name to.
Correct.
And there's an advertisement in 94 of a gentleman around your mother's age, putting out, interested in meeting someone.
Correct. And he's in Ballina.
And
for the geographical sense of the exercise, my mum's money was coming out in Byron Bay.
Yeah.
Ballina is the next town on northern New South Wales. So our heads were spinning at that point. We know that the police tried to find records of who owned that phone number back then, and they kept hitting brick walls. Telstra don't have records going that far back. And that was all legit, like that was the case. But it actually took a gentleman who is a local. He'd listened to the Lady Vanishes as well, and he just took himself down to the local library and hand scanned all the phone books at the time and then ran it through microfiche, and he found the phone number, and it was linked to a business called Ballina Coin Investments. Had the address of where the property was in Ballina as well, so it all linked.
Detective work.
Yeah, so I've found some amazing people through this who have just helped me, or helped us, like everybody in the mix, be able to get to where we are today. And anyway, the owners of that business were called Frederick de Hevedere and Diane de Hevedere. Frederick de Hevedere turns out to be Rick Blum.
Okay. All right. Well, Rick Blum, or that's what we'll call him here. Let's, because I wanted to see how it all tied in. You've explained it very clearly to me, having read it, filled in the pieces that I didn't fully understand through the report from the coroner. So we've got this person by the name of Rick Blum. Mm-hmm. Now, you've told us how it became involved in the investigation. In the inquest that was run, I just want to read something out. And I'm being careful here that And before we start talking about Rick Blum, I want to put on record he's not been charged with anything relating to your mother's disappearance.
Correct,
So we
correct.
put that on record.
Yep.
The state coroner, in her findings regarding Mr. Blum, stated, and he gave evidence at the inquest into your mother's disappearance.
13 days.
13 days. And this is what the coroner said in her findings. I do not accept as accurate anything Mr. Blum has said in evidence in the absence of independent corroborating evidence. That's fairly powerful powerful comments to make about a witness. Your thoughts?
Oh, my thoughts. Look, I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts.
Can I retract that question?
Okay.
Can I just say, because we're going to wrap up part 1 in a sec, but let's just, I want to make another comment because, as I said, I went through the coroner's findings and it's very comprehensive. The coroner also made these comments about the person we know as Rick Blum. Quote from the coroner's findings. Throughout his adult life, Mr. Blum has routinely changed his name. He admitted before the court to using a number of different aliases over the years, including the following. And I'll try and pronounce these properly, but they're a wide range of names. So, Bernard Dupont, Fernando Nicholas Remarkle, Frederick David de Javier, Rick Blum, Richards, Richard Lloyd West, Richard Lloyd Westbury, Richard West, Wiley Coppenole, Wiley David Coppenole, Wiley Wooters, Shane Frederick David de Javier, and Zabdel Zillin. They're 14 names.
Yeah.
So let's just conclude.
Well, just to help you with some of the pronunciation.
Yeah, please do, because I want. Let's do it this way, with the pronunciations. If people are listening to this podcast, maybe these names mean something to them.
So de Hevedary is their surname.
Yep.
Bernard Dupont.
Yep.
And what other ones were there? Oh, Willie Wooters.
Willie Wooters.
And Willie Coppenole.
Yeah.
So Coppenole is his birth name.
Okay. 14 names.
And we have actually found 52 aliases.
I don't think we can read those all out. But
I didn't even have the list here with me,
Yeah.
but that's what we have found in our investigations so far. But they are the ones that were read out in the inquest.
Okay. And look, we're joking about this, but it's not a joke. And I'm reading this out, and this is all. I'm choosing my words carefully because these are comments from the coroner that had the inquest running over an extended period of time. We're going to take a break here. When we get back, I want to find out more about Rick Blum and also talk about all the extraordinary stuff that was uncovered during the inquest. And I'm going to ask you an important question. I'd like to just get your thoughts on it. So let's take a break and we'll be back for part 2 shortly.